Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great Saturday night. If you guys are new here, we do these post-game shows immediately after every Detroit Pistons game. We're going to get into tonight's game. Your Detroit Pistons played against the Denver Nuggets. And I want to go over the first quarter, the fourth quarter, and then after I'm done talking about the quarters, we'll open up the show to Q&As, comments, overall thoughts. But let me get into the first quarter. Okay. So I thought when I was watching this game, especially in the first quarter, back and forth with both of these teams, they were trading buckets, they were exchanging buckets for a majority of the first and the second quarter. Um, this was a game where I was kind of nervous because I had watched the Nuggets play the Cavs the previous night, and the Cavs just hung 140 on those guys, and I expected the Nuggets to come back, try to get a little bit of revenge against your Pistons, and that's what they really did in the first. Cade started off strong, but we'll kind of get into not seeing him in the fourth quarter, but he had 11 points and 3 assists in the first quarter. Malik Beasley had 8 points in the first 6 minutes. One thing that I know people are probably going to bring up is the lane violations with Jalen Duren. So he got 2 lane violations in the first quarter, which, from time to time, you'll see a lane violation. But the fact that he had it twice within like a 60-second span, I probably shouldn't laugh. I know you guys probably aren't laughing at it, but I just found myself chuckling that he had 2 lane violations in the first 60 seconds. But the Pistons did have a 2-point lead to end the first quarter, 38-36. Heading into the second quarter, it was much like the first quarter in terms of just exchanging buckets. And I thought for the first 23 and a half minutes, the Pistons played pretty good basketball. They didn't really make a whole lot of mistakes. The turnovers were low. The ball was moving from side to side, but the last maybe 60 to 90 seconds, Denver started coming alive. They're such a hard team to deal with just in the transition. That's just a team that loves to run. And it's kind of funny because they have Nikola Jokic, who's the best player in basketball, and he's not a guy that you would expect to run, but they have athletes that just really like to run the floor. And I thought the transition game for the Pistons tonight against the Nuggets was really eye-opening. But Denver does end the second quarter on a 10-3 run, and they regain a lead it going into to end the second quarter, I should say, 67-61. Now, coming out of halftime, first 30 seconds, JB takes a timeout. He did not like the body language. He did not like the energy from the Detroit Pistons, and I really don't blame them. I saw what he saw. It just the defensive commitment wasn't there. He calls a timeout, and they go on a little 6-0 run. Kade was hitting some shots. Ivy was hitting some shots, but the Nuggets just came out with more energy, I felt, out of halftime. And I thought this was the tipping point of the game, and you guys would probably agree with me. Russell Westbrook's been in this league for quite some time. Russ was pretty chill for, the first 25, 27 minutes, and then they poked the bear. Russ got into it. It started with a out-of-bounds play where he was just on Kade, wouldn't give him any type of room to get the basketball. Kade shoved him basically in the scorer's table. Turns into a Detroit Piston turnover. And not even 60 seconds later, he gets into it with Isaiah Stewart. And Isaiah Stewart had some words for him. And he gets a technical for trash talking. And then I felt like the Nuggets just had all the momentum for that third quarter. I thought the third quarter was just a thing where the Pistons just made too many mistakes, 2 technical fouls with Stu and Kade, and they kind of let the officials just run the flow of that game. Now, you guys can look at the free throws. The free throw difference tonight was very apparent. You guys can look at it. I have it pulled up in front of me right here. So the Pistons got to the free throw line 23 times. The Nuggets got to the free throw line 36 times. And we'll probably talk about the free throws in a little bit, but you can't let officials kind of dictate how you're going to play. But I know it's really hard when you can't even touch on Nikola Jokic. You can't even put a hand on him when you're trying to defend him, which I'm sure it's very difficult for players like Isaiah Stewart, Paul Reed, and Jalen Duren. But I thought the officiating really hurt the Pistons in the third quarter. It's easier said than done, though. But transitioning into the fourth quarter, I thought this game was over, you guys. I didn't think that there was a situation where this team was going to win the basketball game. But JB benched his starters. There was no Kade Cunningham, no Jaden, no Tobias Harris, no Jalen Duren. It was just bench guys. Ron Holland, Asar Thompson, Wendell Moore, Paul Reed. And they really brought energy. Ron Holland brought energy. Paul Reed. Here's my thing with the Paul Reed stuff. He should have gotten rotational minutes before the fourth quarter. I know Stu came back. It was his first game back. Duren got some, playing time tonight as well. But Paul Reed has done such a great job on this West Coast trip. And I felt like he was a really big factor for the Detroit Pistons trying to get back into this fourth quarter. The bench unit went on a 15-3 run, got the game within 10 when this game was almost as high as a 30-point lead. And, the bench unit finished the game. There were no starters out there whatsoever. But it just wasn't enough for them to come back. The Pistons do lose to the Denver Nuggets 134-121. They do end the West Coast trip 3-1. Now, I do want to say that. The fact that they ended a West Coast trip with 3 wins and 1 loss, obviously tonight against the Nuggets, I'll take it. They were not favored in any of those games. They were not favored against Phoenix. They weren't favored against the Lakers or the Kings. They went out and won 3 basketball games. And I like what I saw out of this West Coast trip. Each win was very chaotic down to the wire. But I think that's what this team is this season. They're a very fun, young, energetic team that gives us chest pains, and we just have to deal with that at the end of the day. But overall, I felt for the first 22 and a half minutes, the starters brought energy, but they let Denver go on a little run to end this second quarter. And I liked what I saw out of the bench unit in the fourth. Play Paul Reed more minutes. Ron Holland is getting more confident in his shot, hit a 3-point shot, hit a nice mid-range 2-point shot. I felt like this was a game for Asar Thompson where he was very active. He had a really nice crossover on Peyton Watson and then dunked the basketball. But overall, I'm not going to, come up here and shit on this team. I felt like this West Coast trip, we can talk about signs of this team going in the right direction, and I think that's what they're doing. I want to get into your guys' comments, questions, overall thoughts with this basketball game and just the West Coast trip, because I do see a lot of comments coming in right now as I'm talking. We just have to hear from our sponsors over at the Draft Kings Sportsbook, you guys, and we'll be right back after this quick message. You guys, I have to tell you about today's sponsor for this podcast, DraftKings. It's the most wonderful time of year for getting in on all of the hoops, football, and hockey action at DraftKings Sportsbook. In the season of giving, we're being gifted college football, college basketball, the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL almost 24/7. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code Pistons Talk. That's code Pistons Talk for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5, you guys. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in New York. Call 1-877-8 HOPNY, or text HOPNY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 1-888-78-977 or visit ccp.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of the Boot Hill Casino Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.com/bball. All right, you guys, we are back after that quick commercial break. Appreciate DraftKings for sponsoring not only this YouTube channel, but this podcast as well. I do want to get into the part of the podcast where I make it all about you guys. If you have any questions, comments, overall thoughts with the basketball games this week, the floor is yours. I do have a couple of comments starred from the live chat on YouTube right now. I want to go to Michigan Made. He says, tough loss, but proud of our bench. Played great in the fourth. I agree. That bench unit just came in with a lot of energy. And something I want to touch on, and I know some people have mentioned it on social media. I think when we're on these long road trips, or even back-to-backs for that matter, I'd like to see JB Bickerstaff maybe go a little bit deeper on his bench. Don't be so stubborn. Don't let a 20-point lead force you to play guys because they're not playing hard. Like, I'd like to see Paul Reed get more minutes. I'd like to see Bobby Klitman play eventually. I'd like to see Marcus Sasser get a little bit more burn. I think his rotations overall throughout the season have been pretty good, but I thought tonight certain guys just didn't have it, and I thought he waited too long to get guys like Paul Reed into the basketball game. But overall, I do agree with you. Michigan Made really liked what I saw out of our bench unit in the fourth quarter. Appreciate the comment, man. Jay Hart, Denver had 19 free throws in the third alone. I do want to touch on that. So Nikola Jokic, I think we can all agree, is one of the best players in basketball. He's a very good basketball player. What's really frustrating, being a fan of the Pistons and watching our players try to at least, put a chest on him, is he gets the benefit of the doubt for even the slightest, the slightest contact, right? I thought there were certain whistles for Jokic tonight that this should not have been fouls. And it doesn't help when he kind of jerks his body around, kind of selling the contact a little bit, which I think is, an art in today's NBA, where a lot of these superstar players sell contact and, the refs fall for it. I thought he did it a couple times tonight. But yeah, 19 free throws in the loan for Denver. That's a lot, Jay Hart. I didn't know it was high as 19. I wasn't keeping count, but it's just so hard to defend a team like Denver that has a good passer in Jokic, and then, supporting cast like Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, guys like Russell Westbrook off the bench. Like, they're a very good basketball team. It'd be really interesting to see what they do with Michael Porter Jr. If they bite the bullet and trade him, you never really know. But yeah, I thought the free throws tonight and the officiating for Denver's side was, as a Piston fan, I was just annoyed by it. I really was. Wes Weaver Jr., shout out to you, man. I haven't seen you in a minute. It was a good trip, but the rotation has to be better. I agree. I think what this West Coast trips taught us was Paul Reed needs to get more minutes. Okay, I like Duren. I really do. But there are times defensively where if I'm JB, and I'm not a coach, it's probably easier said than done. But there are times where maybe I throw Isaiah Stewart in there. Maybe I throw Paul Reed in there. I think Paul Reed just adds a dimension of defending. I like the way he blitzes players. I like his gambles. They usually pay off. His passing, got a nice little mid-range and could spread the floor. But I think overall the rotations, need to be a little bit better, Wes. I do agree with you, especially nights like tonight when, they've been on the road for 10 plus days. Maybe look to play guys that don't get a ton of a clock, like a Wendell Moore or a Paul Reed. Eventually, I'm sure we will see Bobby Klitman, but that's another power forward that can spread the floor, pass and defend. Like at the end of the day, this is a pretty deep basketball team. There's a lot of players on this team that could give the Pistons good minutes, but I'm not going to nitpick rotations too much on this podcast. Got a comment from Cliff, and it's about Kade. That Kade was terrible in the second quarter, opened the 9-point lead. Kade is allowed to have a bad game. The 3-point shooting got in his head, I think, and started pressing. I do want to say this. This was probably one game where I looked and I was really surprised, Cliff, that Kade had like 7 3-point attempts, like in the first half. I do agree with you, though. Like, this was not an ideal game for Kade Cunningham. If we look at the box score, Kade had 17 points on 18 shots. Still had 8 assists, but 1 out of 8 from 3. I think at times a player of his status may look to press a little bit because he's just looking for the ball to go in the basket at the end of the day. I'm not going to get on Kade's ass too much. I thought there were plenty of opportunities for the officials to, call some fouls. Obviously, he didn't really get a fair whistle tonight, but overall, wasn't the best Kade Cunningham game, and I'm sure he will bounce back when the Pistons do play Orlando next week. Want to get another comment from Mizra. He said, I found it particularly funny when the Denver commentator was crying over Paul Reed supposedly flopping to draw a foul on Jokic when Jokic literally flops every game. Okay, so I found this funny because this was in the fourth quarter. Paul Reed, poked the ball from Jokic, and then Jokic is trying to back him down from the 3-point line. And he kind of like puts his elbow into Paul Reed's chest. Paul Reed falls over. Okay. Offensive foul on Jokic. Now, mind you, Denver's up like a good 12 points. And Jokic complained about that foul call to the refs all the way up until the clock hit double zero. He was complaining about it all the way then. And then, like, towards the end of the game, I don't know if you guys caught it. Like, Paul Reed was kind of smiling, like, yeah, I kind of sold it. The fact that it pissed Jokic off that he got a offensive foul call kind of made me laugh. But I do agree with you, man. Like, some of the calls that he gets, like, he gets the superstar whistle. I expect him to get a superstar whistle. He's an MVP, right? But I did find that funny as well, Miz. Like, that was just like, you're really gonna complain, man, when you've been getting the whistle all night. It was just really funny. Travis, why didn't Kade play in the fourth? I don't know. None of the starters really played in the fourth. I don't think any starters actually played in the fourth. It was just a whole bench unit. It could have been a coaching decision with JB, just because the starters really didn't, give any sort of effort in the third quarter. I think JB was just looking for someone out there that was willing to play hard. And I think that's why you didn't see a Kade or Jaden Ivey or Tobias Harris or Jalen Durham for that matter. JB was just looking for someone to go out there and play hard because the third quarter probably was just an effort thing, and he didn't like the body language and the defensive effort from those guys. So, it is what it is. I lost my parlay over that stupid shit. He may have been tired or the Pistons just gave up. See, that's such a tricky situation, Travis, because I get when you hit a parlay. I lost tonight too, man. Like, I had the over on Kade's assist. Obviously, I had him for 10 assists. He had 8 tonight. I lost a little bit of money. I get it, man, at the end of the day, but I'm not gonna ride too hard on Kade's performance. It was a coaching decision, obviously, at the end of the day. Maybe he just wanted to give those guys some rest, wanted to see players out there playing a little bit harder. But overall, I mean, I thought the game just wasn't consistent enough for this team. Wes, should we start Ron at small forward, more energy and hustle? I think once Ron gets a little more confident in his shot, Wes, I wouldn't rule it out. I think for now, though, what this team and what JB probably wants to do is they want to have as much spacing around Kade as possible. I think Ron can become a good shooter. I don't know if him or Asar will be inserted into the starting lineup this season, just because I think the Pistons want to have just optimal floor spacing with Jaden Ivey, with THJ, with Tobias, and you have Durant there at the 5. But I think eventually you could see Ron start at small forward, even play a little bit of 2 guard, because I think his handle is good enough to do that. But I don't think it'll be this season unless he just develops into just a knockdown shooter over the next couple of months. I think that's definitely something that would probably force JB's hand. Cliff, I liked what I saw from Ivy tonight. Yeah, same here, man. I thought Ivy had one of his better games scoring the basketball. I thought he just got to his spots. Had a really, really nice layup in the second quarter. Him and Asar had really, really nice highlight reel plays, but I thought Ivy had a pretty good game overall. But I think defensively, the whole starting unit really didn't bring it in the third and the last minute in the second quarter. Tobias doesn't space the floor. In theory, he does. 3-1-3 dreams. He does space the floor. The shots just aren't falling. Which I just contradicted myself. But you guys get what I'm saying. If you look at Tobias Harris's career, he's been a average 3-point shooter. The shots aren't falling from 3. The only thing with Tobias that I wish they would go away from, and I've mentioned it last week, right? I think even this week, is I want the Pistons to get away from those forced, post touches with Tobias, where they feel like they have to force feed him, good 15 to 17 away from the basket. But in theory, Tobias does space the floor if you just kind of look at his career overall. But he's just not producing the way you want him to produce. Before he did injure his thumb, he was starting to put a couple games together, hoping we can get at least just 16 points a game out of him. If you gave me 15, 16 points a game, I think most of us would be okay with the contract. But overall, he's just struggling right now. What's the one trade you want to make happen this deadline? Ooh, good question, Wes. We're gonna get into this tomorrow. We're gonna have Eric Vincent on the podcast tomorrow at 7. But I'll give you a much short answer. I want to see a center, a rim protection center. And you guys can kind of probably see where my head is at. I think this team, more than anything right now, needs more consistent rim protection at the end of the day, especially at the starting center position. Now, whether they target someone like a Robert Williams from Portland, maybe kind of like a low-key guy, but he has his injury history. That's what I'm looking for. That's the one trade I want to look at. But, if you've listened to Trajan, if you follow the Pistons, West, like I know you do, I don't really know what to expect from the trading deadline. I don't expect any superstar movement, especially for the Pistons. I don't expect them to go get the Levines or the Ingrams. I do expect them to use their cap space very wisely to try to take on assets and get some more draft capital. Sean Don, do you think that anything less than a play-in spot would be underachieving considering how well we've been playing overall? I said at the beginning of the year that the play-in tournament should be the goal. Now, if they don't make the play-in tournament, but let's say they win 30 games, I still think that's progress. I would ask you, Sean, what is your expectation? Because I feel like everyone's expectations for the Detroit Pistons are different. Me going into the season, I had very low expectations. I had this team around 27 wins and trying to at least compete for that play and like maybe around 11, 12 seed. Those were my expectations. I didn't really have a lot of expectations for the Detroit Pistons this season. Now, obviously, they have 14 wins. They're at the halfway mark of their over that Vegas did project them around, 27 games, 28 games. But overall, if they can get, 30 plus wins and, maybe just miss the play-in tournament, for me as a fan, that's progress. And I think they achieved. I know some fans would probably say that's an underachievement because the way they've been playing, like you had mentioned. Thoughts on Ivy as the sixth man? Well, this is a good question. Through and three dreams. Now, as the sixth man, so who would you change in the starting lineup? Like, are you taking Jaden Ivey out of the starting lineup completely and maybe filling in like a Malik Beasley? I know some people have talked about Jaden Ivey as a sixth man, but I would say that Jaden Ivey right now should be the starting shooting guard next to Kade Cunningham. I think Malik Beasley as a sixth man should be a conversation we should start having because his impact this year has been amazing. Get to a couple more questions and probably wrap this podcast up because I'm going to see you guys tomorrow with Eric Vincent. Want to kind of like get back to Shandon Sports because he had a question about expectations, and this is kind of his answer. He said, I had lower expectations starting out too, but with the Bulls possibly selling and even Philly making a push, I think we'll still make a ninth right now. I would say play-in should be the goal for this team. But you were like me, you had lower expectations. You didn't really expect a whole lot. And that's to be expected after winning 14 games. Obviously, you bring in, veterans like it's Tim Hardaway Jr., who you traded for. You got 3 draft picks. You signed Tobias Harris in free agency. You get Malik Beasley. You claim Paul Reed off waivers. Like, they made, improvements to this roster. I think they might have more wins if Paul Reed played more personally. I really do. This is going to this be like a Paul Reed Stan account because all my stock is in Paul Reed right now. Like I just love what I'm seeing out of Paul Reed. Sasser starts. I don't think Sasser is going to start, Wes. I like Sasser, but I don't think he's ready to start, especially at shooting guard. I think me and Sasser are the same height, and I'm barely like 6'1". I like Sasser, but having a 6'1" shooting guard, I don't think is ideal. I think Sasser can definitely be a guy off the bench, like a bucket off the bench, not an energy guy. Just a bucket off the bench, like a Bones Highland, if you will, a Lou Williams type, just someone you can bring and you're expecting them to score at the end of the day. I don't think Sasser's ready to start on this team, though. I like Sasser, though, but we'll do one more question. This comes from Elite Human Network. Said, should JB ask Mike Brown to join his staff? Brown is wildly successful assistant coach. Well, they would have to get rid of an assistant coach for that to happen. I don't think that's going to. But I think Mike Brown, the firing of him was really weird. I was really surprised. And we're going to get into the Kings discourse tomorrow because Kings fans have been absolutely wild. We're going to get into it on the podcast with Eric tomorrow. But I don't understand why he got let go. I mean, the Kings are going to king. You let a coach get fired because he's trying to hold his star point guard and De'Aaron Fox accountable. And I don't, if you look who De'Aaron Fox's agent is and you look who the owner is, you can connect the dots. It's Rich Paul. There's, rumblings that De'Aaron Fox may want to get traded out of Sacramento. And, Mike Brown was just on a, uphill battle. Like if they win, they're probably not firing him, but the fact that he called out Fox, we're not closing out on Jaden Ivey, and he got fired via phone call after, he went into practice and they were getting ready for a road trip, called him from the airport and let him know that he's fired. Like that's just so low class, man. Like the Kings are one of the worst organizations in the NBA. They've been through so many great head coaches and they still can't figure it out. They always think it's a coaching problem. The coaches are the scapegoat. Which from Mike Brown, well, maybe he goes back to Golden State as an assistant, but I didn't like the firing. I thought it was really bad. And I'm glad a lot of coaches are speaking up and, kind of throwing the Kings ownership under the bus because they deserve it. They really do. I know I said that was the last question. I'll do one more for my guy Jay Hart. I agree with that, and Paul Starks might be a 500 team. Yeah, like Paul Reed's a good Paul Reed's a good basketball player. Like his nickname is B-Ball Paul, probably the best nickname on the Detroit Pistons. But yeah, man, like just the effort he gives, the winning plays that he makes, the defense, the passing, being able to stretch the floor. Like if I'm JB and the Pistons, I'm giving Paul Reed way more minutes. I don't want to see Paul Reed come into the game when they're down 20 points and you feel you're forced to give him minutes because it's a blowout. Like I would have much rather seen Paul Reed in the third quarter when the game started slipping away. And I love Stu. I know he just came back, but maybe throw Paul out there. It gives your offense a whole other dynamic and look. But overall, this week has been good. There's a lot of things that we learned out of this team in this West Coast trip. They're definitely heading in the right direction. And I can honestly say that. But overall, really liked what I saw out of Paul Reed this week. Jaden Ivey, I thought, had a great week. Kade Cunningham had a great week outside of tonight. But I think there's a lot of things that we can be proud about with this team going forward. But want to wrap this podcast up, you guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 7:00. We'll be joined with Eric Vincent, Detroit Pistons beat reporter from ClutchPoints.com. We're going to get into a lot of topics, Piston news throughout the week, trade rumors throughout the week, and we'll have a good show for you guys. But appreciate all 50 of you guys watching right now on YouTube. Some of these comments I cannot read. You guys are wild. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hope you guys have a great weekend and a great night, and go Pistons.